Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is diminish. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way we can use diminish is to mean to make something be less or for something to become less. Now, you might recognize this definition as being pretty much exactly the same as the definition of yesterday's verb, lessen. So, lessen and diminish are synonyms. They have similar meanings. A second way we can use this verb diminish can mean to make someone or something seem less impressive or valuable. So, with the first definition of this verb, many times we're thinking about an amount or a quantity of something, right? And seeing that reduce, okay? With the second definition, it really deals more with our perceptions, our thoughts. And so when we look at something and maybe previously we thought, wow, that's impressive, or wow, that's valuable. Now something is affecting it, and it's kind of reducing that impressiveness or reducing what we believe the value of something to be. A third way the verb diminish gets used can mean to lessen the authority, the dignity, or the reputation of someone or something. So we'll see some examples of that as we move through our video. For now, you should know that diminish is a regular verb. To make the progressive form of this verb, all you need to do is add ing to form diminishing. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, diminish, ends in an unvoiced sound. That sh sound in English is unvoiced. And this means the ed ending is going to make a t sound when we say it. And we're not going to add an extra syllable when we pronounce that past tense or participle form. It should sound like this: diminished, diminished. Okay. Now, I don't have any phrasal verbs that we need to learn or review their meanings. So instead, we can focus on making some example sentences in two different verb tenses. Today, we'll talk about the present progressive and the simple future. Let's start with the present progressive. Many teachers, textbooks, and even other YouTube videos call this the present continuous, and that's just fine. It means exactly the same thing. So in the present progressive or the present continuous, we can be describing an action that is happening now. We can also use it to describe actions that are in progress during a time period that is not yet complete. Now, the reason I like calling this verb tense present progressive is that you can see two P's to the name of the verb tense. And I want you to remember that means you're going to need two parts to make your verb. So to make present progressive verbs or sentences in the present progressive, particularly in the affirmative, we start with our subject. We use a present form of be, and then we use the ing form of the verb. This means our verbs are going to look a little bit different because we have three forms of be in the present. So if my subject is I'm going to use am and then that ing form the verb. If my subject is you, we, or they, I'll use are, A-R-E, and then the ing form of the verb. And finally, if my subject is he, she, or it, then I use is, is, and the ing form of the verb. Let's take a look now at an example. In the affirmative here, it says print media is diminishing, and some blame publishers' use of social media for it. So here, print media, this could include newspapers, magazines, right? So we're talking about things that actually get printed. And it's harder to find. Some organizations have just stopped actually printing things. And many people kind of talk about how the presence of that is lessening or decreasing significantly. And of course, then people talk about why. And this, I was reading an article recently that placed some blame on social media for that. Uh, Now let's move on and talk about making negative sentences in the present progressive. So to do this, um, again, we start with our subject, we use the form of be that matches, then not, and then that ing form the verb. Let's look at another example sentence. Women's at-home duties aren't diminishing as they take on demanding jobs, and this contributes to pay inequity. Okay? Again, this is a sentence I borrowed from something else I was reading. Here, what they're trying to describe is that in many homes, not every home, of course, where you have a married couple or you have partners, in many cases, it's the women who are doing a lot of the cooking and the cleaning, the laundry, the childcare, right? And they're saying those responsibilities are not decreasing. They're not being reduced, even though more and more are working outside the home. Now, let's take a look at making a yes or no question in the present progressive. To do this, start with your present form of be, whichever form matches your subject, that subject comes next. Then you're going to use the ing form, the verb. Here's another example. Is the country's military strength diminishing? Okay, so again, think lessening as we review those. Now let's move on and talk about the simple future. There are different ways to make sentences in the simple future, but today we're going to focus on making sentences with be going to. Okay? And I wanted to do this on purpose because sometimes present progressive and be going to can get confused because they both use a present form of be. But what you're going to notice here is, again, we start with a subject, we use am, is, or are, then it's going to, and then the base verb. So here, we're not adding an ing to the end of the verb. Let's take a look at an affirmative example sentence. The wind is going to diminish as we go through this evening. Okay? This is what I heard a meteorologist say recently, kind of talking about the weather forecast, right? The winds had been extremely strong in the morning, even at midday, but they're saying that the strength or the intensity is going to become less. Now, let's look at making a negative sentence in the simple future. Again, we start with our subject, we use the present form of be, then not before going to and the base verb. Here's another example. The widespread riots are going to diminish without significant policy changes. So, this came from a story about unrest in a particular country and kind of the violence as people sort of fight and protest problems that they feel are ongoing. Finally, let's take a look at a yes or no question in the simple future using be going to. Again, start with your form of be, whichever form matches that subject, that comes next, then going to and our base verb. Here's my last example sentence. Is literacy going to diminish because of people's use of artificial intelligence? Which people more commonly now just say AI. Right? That's what that means. So this is a concern and a question I've heard a lot of teachers ask. And things similar to this are asked many times as there's new technology, right? As calculators became more widespread, people asked, are people's ability to do arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, is that going to diminish? So another question, How is this going to affect our reading ability? Now, let's move on and talk about some words in a phrase related to our verb diminish. The first word we'll discuss is the noun diminishment. This can be the act of making a person or thing seem lesser, little, or unimportant. An example of this: people are talking about the age-related diminishment of the candidates. This is something that is discussed a great deal in the United States right now. We have two presidential candidates who are both quite old. One in their late 70s, one in his early 80s, and they're kind of wanting to know about their capacity to work and make decisions, understand things. Is that being sort of reduced due to their age? Another related word you might encounter is the adjective diminishable. So that suffix able can mean able to or capable of being reduced in size, volume, or importance. An example of how this could be used: the group who took the low dose showed a constant diminishable trend throughout the study. Okay. This is a rather technical sentence that came from more medical research, where people were looking at kind of the effects of taking a particular medication. Some took a higher dose, some less, some took nothing, right? And kind of saying that the trend of I believe it was some kind of positive benefit, or a reduction in some sort of symptom, that continued to lessen or reduce throughout their study in the period of time that they were looking at it. Okay, one phrase for us to discuss. That phrase is diminishing returns. What this generally means is that there are proportionally smaller profits or smaller benefits that someone is getting or deriving from something else, even though they begin to spend more money or spend more energy on that thing. Let's take a look at an example here. Some companies are finding diminishing returns with their in-office mandates. Right? So I know many of you might have had this experience of being sent home, working at home during the pandemic. For some people, they've just stayed and continued to work from their home. Others maybe have started coming back 1 day, 2 days. And in some cases, some companies have encouraged or required people to return to the office all 5 days of the week. And some of those companies are seeing less productivity. That would be a benefit, even though they've been spending all of this money and time encouraging people to come back in and work from the office. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope our ability to understand hasn't diminished throughout this video. Have a great day.